The Last Night of the Titanic. April the 14th, 1912. The North Atlantic. The Titanic is 4 days into her maiden voyage from Southampton to New York. She is the largest moving object ever built by human hands. 882 feet long. 175 feet from her keel to the top of her funnels. 46,000 tons of steel and iron and coal. She is a floating palace, a monument to human ambition and engineering. The White Star Line has spared no expense. The first-class dining saloon seats 550 guests beneath a magnificent glass dome. The grand staircase, with its wrought iron balustrades and carved oak paneling, descends through 7 decks. There is a swimming pool, a gymnasium, a Turkish bath, a squash court. There is even a Parisian café with real French waiters. The ship is unsinkable. Everyone says so. The Shipbuilder magazine called her practically unsinkable. Captain Smith himself, the most experienced commander in the White Star Line, remarked that he could not imagine any condition which would cause a ship to founder. Modern shipbuilding has gone beyond such things. On this cold April night, the Titanic is steaming through the dark waters of the North Atlantic. The sea is calm, almost unnaturally so. The water is like glass. The sky is clear, blazing with stars. There is no moon. The temperature is dropping fast, approaching freezing. But inside the ship, in the warm glow of electric lights, the passengers are enjoying their evening. In the first-class dining saloon, the passengers are finishing a magnificent 10-course dinner. Oysters, consommé, poached salmon, filet mignon, roast duckling, lamb with mint sauce, pâté de foie gras, and elaborate desserts. The men in their white tie and tails, the women in their evening gowns, the jewels glittering in the electric light. The orchestra plays light classical music. The conversation is of business, of politics, of the new life waiting in America. In the second-class dining room, the meal is simpler but still elegant. These are the teachers, the clergymen, the small business owners, the respectable middle class. They too are excited about the new world ahead. Many of them are emigrating, seeking better opportunities for their families. They talk about their plans, their hopes, their dreams. In third class, deep in the ship, the atmosphere is different. Here are the immigrants, Irish, Swedish, Finnish, Lebanese, Syrian, Russian. They have scraped together everything they had for a ticket to America. The steerage passengers share simple food and play music on fiddles and accordions. They dance. They sing. They are poor, but they are hopeful. They are going to the land of opportunity. At 11:40, most of the passengers are in their cabins. The orchestra has finished playing. The lights in the public rooms are being dimmed. The ship is quiet. The sea is quiet. The stars are bright overhead. In the crow's nest, high above the deck, 2 lookouts stand watch. Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee. They are cold. The temperature is near freezing now. They stamp their feet and peer into the darkness ahead. They have no binoculars. The binoculars for the crow's nest were misplaced in Southampton, locked in a cabinet whose key was held by an officer who was transferred off the ship at the last minute. So the lookouts rely only on their eyes. And then, Frederick Fleet sees something. Ahead, directly in the ship's path, a dark shape against the dark water. At first it is just a shadow. Then it is larger. Then it is unmistakable. An iceberg. Fleet reaches for the bell. He rings it 3 times, the signal for an object directly ahead. Then he grabs the telephone to the bridge. "What do you see?" he asks the voice on the other end. "Iceberg, right ahead." On the bridge, First Officer William Murdoch reacts instantly. He orders the helm hard to starboard. He orders the engines full astern. He closes the watertight doors. But it is too late. The Titanic is too large and moving too fast to turn quickly. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side of the ship. The impact is not a violent crash. It is more like a long, grinding shudder. Many passengers do not even notice it. Some feel a slight vibration and think nothing of it. A few are curious enough to go on deck, where they see chunks of ice scattered on the forward well deck. Someone starts an impromptu snowball fight. But deep in the ship, the damage is catastrophic. The iceberg has torn a series of gashes along the first 6 watertight compartments. The ship is designed to survive the flooding of 4 compartments. 6 are flooding. Thomas Andrews, the ship's chief designer, is summoned. He descends into the bowels of the ship to inspect the damage. What he sees chills him to the bone. Water is pouring in, roaring through the corridors, rising fast. He does the calculations in his head, the same calculations he has done 1,000 times on paper. For compartments flooded, the ship stays afloat. 5, maybe. But 6? He climbs back to the bridge. His face is pale. He tells Captain Smith what he has found. The Titanic is going to sink. "How long?" asks the captain. "An hour. Perhaps 2. No more. There are 2,200 people on board. There are lifeboats for just over 1,100. The ship was designed to carry more boats, but the White Star Line decided they cluttered the deck. The regulations only required boats for 962 people. They exceeded the regulations. They were proud of that. The crew begins to wake the passengers. Put on your life belts. Go to the boat deck. At first, many people refuse to leave the warmth of their cabins. The ship is unsinkable, after all. Why would they go out into the freezing night? Some put on their life belts over their pajamas as a joke. They take photographs of each other. They laugh. But the ship is listing. Slightly at first, then more noticeably. The bow is dipping lower. The water is rising. The first lifeboat is lowered at 12:45 in the morning. It carries 28 people. It has a capacity of 65. The crew does not know how to fill the boats properly. The officers are afraid they will buckle under full loads. They send them away half empty. The orchestra begins to play. Wallace Hartley, the band leader, has assembled his musicians in the first-class lounge. They are playing light music to keep the passengers calm. Later, they move out onto the boat deck. They continue to play. No one will ever hear them stop. The situation on the boat deck grows more desperate. Women and children are loaded into the boats first. Husbands kiss their wives goodbye. Fathers hand their children to strangers. They do not know if they will ever see them again. They try to be brave. They say things like, "I'll see you in New York, and it's just a precaution." On the slanting decks, the angle grows steeper. People begin to slide toward the stern. Furniture crashes. Glass shatters. The lights flicker. The ship groans, a terrible sound, the sound of steel being torn apart by forces it was never designed to withstand. At 2:18 in the morning, the lights go out. The Titanic is plunged into darkness. The bow is completely submerged. The stern rises higher and higher into the air, the propellers exposed against the stars. For a long, terrible moment, the ship hangs there, suspended between the sea and the sky. Then she breaks in two. The stern crashes back down into the water. The bow plunges toward the ocean floor, 2.5 miles below. The stern fills with water and follows, slipping beneath the surface at 2:20 in the morning. The sea is silent. The stars are still bright. And the water is filled with people. 1,500 souls are in the freezing North Atlantic. The water temperature is 28 degrees, below the freezing point of fresh water, kept liquid only by the salt. A human being can survive in water that cold for perhaps 15 minutes. The people in the lifeboats hear the screams. It is a sound that will haunt them for the rest of their lives. Hundreds of voices, crying out in the darkness. The sound of 1,000 people dying in the cold. The sound fades slowly, as one by one, the voices fall silent. Only one lifeboat goes back. Only one. The others float in the darkness, their passengers paralyzed by fear and cold, listening to the dying and doing nothing. It is a shameful fact about that night. One that the survivors rarely spoke about afterward. The Carpathia, a small Cunard liner, was 58 miles away when she received the Titanic's distress call. Her captain, Arthur Rostron, ordered every possible measure to reach the scene. He turned off the ship's heating to divert every ounce of steam to the engines. He posted extra lookouts. He prepared the ship's hospital, set up hot soup stations, organized the crew to receive survivors. The Carpathia raced through the ice field at 17 knots, faster than she had ever gone before, dodging icebergs in the darkness. She arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning. The sun was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky. What the crew saw would stay with them forever. A field of wreckage, deck chairs, broken wood, pieces of cork from life belts. And lifeboats. Small wooden boats scattered across the calm sea, filled with frozen, silent people. The Carpathia picked up 705 survivors. The rest, more than 1,500 people, were gone. The richest man on the ship, John Jacob Astor, went down with her. The poorest immigrant from steerage went down with her. The captain went down with his ship. The band played until the very end. The engineers stayed at their posts, keeping the lights burning as long as possible, knowing they would never escape. The Titanic sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes. She took with her the confidence of an age. The belief that technology could conquer nature, that human ingenuity could overcome any obstacle, that belief sank with her. The world would never be quite so certain again. Today, the wreck lies at the bottom of the Atlantic, 2.5 miles down. It was discovered in 1985 by Robert Ballard, who found the ship split in two, half a mile apart on the ocean floor. The bow is remarkably intact, buried deep in the sediment. The stern is a tangle of twisted steel, flattened by the impact with the seabed. Shoes lie scattered across the wreck site, leather shoes that once belonged to people, the leather preserved by the cold and the darkness and the absence of life. The Titanic is a grave. It is also a memorial. It reminds us that pride goes before destruction, that the mightiest works of human hands are fragile, that the sea is vast and cold and indifferent to our ambitions. And it reminds us of those 1,500 souls who set out across the ocean with hope in their hearts, and never reached the other shore. In the quiet of a cold April night, if you listen very carefully, you can almost hear the music still playing. Nearer, my God, to thee. The waves lap against the ice. The stars shine down on the empty sea. And the great ship sleeps in the darkness below, waiting, dreaming, remembering. The wreck of the Titanic was discovered on September 1st, 1985. A joint American-French expedition led by Dr. Robert Ballard had been searching for the ship for weeks. They were using a remotely operated vehicle named Argo, equipped with cameras and sonar, to scan the ocean floor 2.5 miles below the surface. In the early hours of the morning, the watch team noticed something on the monitor. Debris. Then a boiler, identical to those in photographs of the Titanic. Then the hull itself, rising from the darkness, covered in rust but still recognizable. Someone checked the time. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, almost exactly the time the ship had sunk, 73 years earlier. Ballard later wrote about that moment. The cheers of his team quickly faded into silence as they realized they were looking at a grave. More than 1,500 people had died here. The ship's bell was still visible. The davits from which the lifeboats had been lowered. The grand staircase, now an empty shaft descending into blackness. Shoes scattered across the debris field, leather shoes, perfectly preserved by the cold and the absence of light and life, each pair marking the place where someone had come to rest. The discovery of the Titanic captured the imagination of the world. Here was a legend made real, a ghost given form. The photographs brought back by Ballard's expedition showed a ship frozen in time, dishes still stacked in the pantry, a chandelier still hanging from the ceiling of the first-class lounge, the telemotor on the bridge still set to full astern, exactly as Quartermaster Hessians had left it on that terrible night. Since that first discovery, many expeditions have visited the wreck. Artifacts have been recovered and preserved, jewelry, letters, bottles of champagne that had never been opened, a pocket watch frozen at the moment it hit the water. Each object tells a story. Each object is a thread connecting our world to the world of that cold April night in 1912. But the wreck is deteriorating. The bacteria that feed on iron are slowly consuming the ship. Scientists estimate that within a few decades, the Titanic will collapse entirely, becoming an unrecognizable pile of rust on the ocean floor. The sea reclaims everything, in the end. And yet the story endures. The Titanic has become more than a shipwreck. It has become a symbol of human pride and human vulnerability, of the fragility of our greatest achievements, of the courage and cowardice that emerges in moments of crisis. It reminds us that the unsinkable can sink, that the mightiest works of our hands are no match for the forces of nature, that in the face of the vast, cold, indifferent sea, we are all equal. The survivors are all gone now. The last was Milvina Dean, who was just 9 weeks old when the Titanic sank. She died in 2009, at the age of 97. With her passing, the last living connection to the Titanic was severed. All that remains are the stories, the photographs, the artifacts in museums, and the wreck itself, slowly dissolving in the darkness. In the quiet of a cold April night, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear it. The distant strains of the orchestra, playing on. The cries of the gulls that circled the rescue ships at dawn. The soft lapping of the waves against the iceberg that still drifts somewhere in the vast Atlantic, melting slowly, returning to the sea from which it came. The Titanic sleeps. The stars shine down on the empty water. And the story continues, told and retold, a warning and a memorial and a strange, sad sort of comfort. The great ship was lost, but she was never forgotten. And as long as stories are told, she never will be.